Hey friends, today I would love to show you the decks I am planning to work with regarding my shadow work. A little note beforehand, I am really eager and feel called to do shadow work. However, I am not 100% sure where my shadow work is going to lead me, so I am still on the path of discovery regarding it. I have cleansed my space with my little sacred wood. I have invited the decks to talk to me beforehand, and I hope that we will get a nice and fruitful reading out of this at the end. But first, I would love to introduce you to the decks that I'm working with. First up, I have the Outgrow Yourself deck as well as the Seer Tarot here. Both of these decks immediately spoke to each other as soon as I put them together. The Outgrow Yourself, I feel like, is a favorite in my collection. I absolutely love the illustrations. I love the messages on the cards. I love that it can be used either as an oracle clarifier or as a tarot in its own right. This deck never fails to evoke some kind of shadowy emotion. However, it is also great at cushioning that emotion and in cutting deep without letting you bleed out. Together with this deck, I received the Seer Tarot fairly recently, and this one is just full-on shadow. This one doesn't hold back. It's going to punch you in the gut and let you sit with it. That is why I would like to pair it with the Outgrow Yourself, because the Outgrow Yourself still has the beauty, the cushion. This one has beauty in glass shards. And together, I think they speak and work beautifully. I also enjoy that the Seer Tarot is very black and white, down to the basics, and the Outgrow Yourself has this pop of color, that gentleness with the flowers, the animals that are depicted. The Shadow Seers feels like the subconscious, the things that are lurking, while the Outgrow Yourself feels like me as a person in my physical form, so thoughts versus body, if you will. My second combination of decks are the Witch's Tarot as well as the Long Way Home Oracle. Now, the Long Way Home Oracle is the newest addition to my collection, and the Witch's Tarot has been a longer companion. This is, I believe, the first edition that came out, and she's been with me for several years now. And she used to be my moon working deck. However, she hasn't been speaking in that way to me anymore. And I wanted to give her the grace of emerging as something else. And I do believe that these two are meant for each other in my practice. And they're just beautifully portraying the spectrum to me of grief, female rage, and kind of the hurt that comes with girlhood moving into womanhood, for me personally. Again, these two are just magical together for me. While I'm still familiarizing myself with the Long Way Home Oracle, this one speaks to kind of a nostalgic wound, like a child wound that's trying to be like a grown up, that's trying to be an adult woman, even though oftentimes I still struggle with stepping into my femininity and womanhood. And the Witch's Oracle has a very primal almost feeling to me. It taps into sensuality, sexuality, but also the power of the female body, the power of the female will and psyche. And these two feel very mature together as well. And I think I need this kind of photography realism in my shadow work, where my previous decks were illustration or symbolism based. These feel rooted in reality. These feel like tangible things that are applicable to what I'm going through in life. Now the spread I'm going to use to tap into this first little foray of shadow work for me is called I Am Both Wound and Knife. It was shared by Bone Dead Tarot. Again, I will be linking the spread down in my description. I think this is a beautiful spread for self-reflection and shadow work. And it just spoke to me for today. I will be pulling from all 4 decks, 1 card from each deck, and we'll just see what emerges. The first card is I Am the Wound. Where am I raw and painful to the touch? Heart-shaped memories. Heart-shaped memories could be a lot. It could be related to love. It could be related to something I am heavily romanticizing, even though it hasn't been that great. I will have a closer look on the card now. This does speak to me in a sense of safety. These people look like they do not enjoy each other's embrace. Something that should feel safe and sacred, something as close as an embrace, should feel nice, wonderful, and safe. And I don't think that this embrace looks safe. The person on the left kind of biting their nails, giving a bit of a nervous energy. The person on the right kind of perhaps trying to hold the other person through this nervous energy. But to me, it does not speak to safety or comfort. It speaks to an awkward kind of holding things together that perhaps shouldn't be held together at this moment. I do enjoy the shoes with the pop of color. They're giving me date night vibes. You know, you're putting your best shoes on, you're putting your best foot forward. However, not all the time this is going to make a difference. If it's not meant to be, it is not meant to be. And this glass that's being held with the liquid with water in it reminds me of, what am I conserving? What am I holding in a jar tightly shut that perhaps has run its course. Now let us circle back to the question, I am the wound, where am I raw and painful to the touch? So I could see this as me being raw and painful literally to the touch. As a person on the spectrum, I am of the variety that really struggles with physical touch. So we can take that literally. However, I think that there may be relationships that I'm really trying to conserve and hold on to tightly, where I'm dressing myself up to be the best version of myself, and no matter how hard I'm trying to hold on to this, it's just an uncomfortable situation overall. And now, do I want to keep this trapped? Is it worth preserving, or should I court something else? The second question in the spread is, I am the knife. How do I create or sustain this injury? The King of Wands. This is an interesting card. The King of Wands is always very full on for me. So much energy, so much intensity. I struggle with intensity. So if I embody intensity, it usually comes from a place of being cornered and me trying to get out of it. So where do I feel intensely cornered right now, that I'm in a situation where I would rather preserve a negative relationship rather than just step back, move on, and move out? So this is something for me to actually think about, because I think this relationship doesn't necessarily have to be with another human. This could be my relationship to my own body, my relationship to the world outside. So this is something I think I would ponder on once I've turned the camera off, or perhaps the other cards will put a bit more clarity on it. But I do like to ponder, I have to say. I do not need clarity every time with every single card, because sitting here and thinking about it usually brings me the conclusion, or the start of the conclusion that I so desire. Now, if I look at both of these cards next to each other, the King of Wands feels almost like an orchestrator, like somebody who beckons you to do the unhealthy thing. They are very intense to me, very manipulative almost. So I perhaps sustain this unhealthy attachment with my intensity, with me creating this need for energy. I need this energy, but why? And what am I too attached to, or whom? Personally, I feel it is more a question of what than whom, because I have very few people in my life at the moment, and all of them are beautiful people, except for perhaps some family members. But interesting. I'll just let it sit here for now and get the other two decks in. Now, question number 3 in this spread is the vampire of my own heart. I drain myself. How and why? I will choose the Shadow Seer for this one. the Five of Cups and misery. Now, this card reminds me very much of the I do not like being touched energy of our first card. It feels like this being is being grabbed by too many things, too many feelings, too many emotions, energies, and it's really becoming hard to see what's even going on. So this speaks not only to misery but also to overwhelm for me, to being perhaps handled in a way that causes misery. It doesn't feel, in this particular case, like self-inflicted misery. It feels like it's being thrust upon. Now, how do I drain myself? And why? Perhaps I allow others to touch me metaphorically, or I allow things to affect me and touch me, force kind of their energy upon me that causes me to just want to shrivel up, shrivel up and like retreat. The misery of the Five of Cups in this particular card feels like just too much, too many things, too much touch. So I drain myself by allowing that touching to happen. I perhaps currently do not have a wall up. I do not have the right defenses. Because perhaps I want to preserve something. And the energies are so strong. And I just don't know how to push them back off. I just allow them to affect me. I'll let that sit here. And the fourth card that we're pulling here is Break the Cycle. What can I do to break free of this cycle of self-torment? The High Priestess, your voice will guide you. That is quite a beautiful conclusion here. Your voice will guide you tells me that this is not about actions here. This is about speaking up, about vocalizing, about not letting things happen without having spoken up about me. So my defense does not come from action, but words. That is interesting to me. The High Priestess also feels open. She takes her hands off, where in misery the hands are very on. So that to me also says, hands off, you know? Speak up, don't engage physically. Vocalize, articulate yourself. And your best defense is the hands off, no thank you, be very direct approach. As I'm sitting with this reading, I feel like a story emerges. There is this wound about attachment, about really wanting to preserve things, presenting myself to be this dashing figure to preserve an unhealthy attachment. Something that feels perhaps nostalgic, that once was but isn't anymore. I perpetuate this by just focusing on the very intense energy that this used to bring on. But now it just feels overwhelming, and it leaves me in a state of misery of too much, everything all at once. I don't want this. So to break the cycle, I need to take my hands off. I need to be the one who says, no, not anymore. Now, what this pertains to, I have an inkling, though I would like to journal on it first, and perhaps in the next installment of this shadow work, we can go over the conclusion. And until then, I'll croak you later. Bye.